Amadeus makes the experience of travel better for everyone everywhere by inspiring innovation, partnerships, and responsibility to people, places, and planet. Our technology powers the travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, centered around the traveler. Our open platform connects the global travel and hospitality ecosystem, from startups to big industry players and governments too. Together, redesigning the travel of tomorrow. Amadeus, it's how travel works. Visit us to know more, amadeus.com.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Skift India Travel Podcast. I know it's been almost 3 months since our last episode, but I'm excited to be back here with you all. I know we've been on a bit of a hiatus, but I promised it was for a good reason. During this break, we were deeply involved in preparing for the first ever Skift India Summit that took place at the Leela Palace Hotels in Delhi and Gurugram last month. The summit featured discussions around the big picture themes shaping travel and tourism in India. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who attended the summit. Your engagement made the event a resounding success, if I may say so. Social media was buzzing with messages to the Skift team, and it was inspiring to see such enthusiasm and interest from all of you. Now, let's dive into this episode of our podcast, which is dedicated to recapping the highlights and key takeaways from the Skift India Summit. We will also revisit some of the discussions and share some of the thought-provoking quotes and perspectives from our speakers. Now, one of the speakers that I was most keen to hear from was Ritesh Agarwal, the founder and group CEO of Oyo. During his conversation with Skift founder and CEO Rafat Ali, Agarwal addressed the question on Oyo's most anticipated IPO launch. Now, here's what Ritesh had to say.
Look, I think from our IPO perspective, in 2021, we considered, or 2022, in that range, we considered a public offering. At that point of time, we required access to capital because we were just coming out of COVID, capital was needed. Good news is now the company is profitable, cash flow generating, so capital is
and you're profitable the last 2 quarters last year. I think that's what it was, really?
We've been profitable a couple of quarters behind. Yeah. So I think what that has done is now there is no tearing need of capital. But what I've learned
Except for that Bloomberg story that you're trying to raise $400 million from the Malaysian sovereign fund.
I think, I'd just focus on... look, my view is that at this point of time, we don't need access to capital from either of the public markets or the private markets. Currently, our focus is just delivering good earnings results and so on. Our board is, of course, keeping a very close eye in the public markets. I think the Indian public markets, especially for hotel companies, have done really well.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think, when we see opportunities ahead of ourselves, you may have seen that 2 months back, we paid down almost $200 million of our debt through both cash in hand as well as the cash that our company had generated. So we will continue to delever. Our continued job is that we generate more cash, delever, make sure that shareholders have great returns. Whenever the board feels that the markets are right for them to consider public offering, we will be ready to go out.
And while on the topic of trying newer things, Agarwal also spoke about why Oyo, which so far had mostly been operating in the budget hotel space, is now looking to go upscale.
So look, I think what we're seeing is we see India, of course, as a home market, and hence our ability to experiment and try newer things is easier. The Indian customer is rapidly evolving. The per capita income is growing in a speed like never before.
Right.
The recent results came out. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world, growing by almost 8.5% GDP rate. So our view is that fundamentally the same customers who are spending $30 today would like to spend $50 or $60 in some years. And the same customers who are spending $50 today would like to spend $100 or $200 in the years to come. Doesn't mean there'll be not new customers who will spend $30. There will be those. But we think that in India, there's an opportunity to upscale because a lot of our current owners are getting these upmarket hotels and our current customers are wanting to go and stay in these.
Also, on a personal note, I really enjoyed my conversation with Air India CEO Campbell Wilson. Talking about the big turnaround for the Indian full-service carrier, Wilson spoke about how the average age of employees has come down from 54 years to 34 years after the Tatas took over India's flagship carrier in 2022.
Now, in terms of people, there had been no recruitment of non-fly people for 15 years. The average age was 54 with a retirement age of 58. We've been able to inject a whole bunch of new people into business by necessity, but also for their competency, and bring the average age from 54 down to 35. Well, so many of them, average age of 54 going to 58, many of them are retiring every month, to the extent that we've tried to help people with this transition, because transitioning from government way of working to private sector way of working is traumatic for people sometimes. And so we'd offer people voluntary retirement, and a couple of thousand people have taken that. So it's been a transition that has been very smooth, very consensual, but also hugely transformative in terms of culture and capabilities. And so the IT people, there are many other examples, but in so many dimensions, we are as much a startup as we are a transformation.
Amadeus makes the experience of travel better for everyone everywhere by inspiring innovation, partnerships, and responsibility to people, places, and planet. Our technology powers the travel and tourism industry, inspiring more open ways of working, more connected ways of thinking, centered around the traveler. Our open platform connects the global travel and hospitality ecosystem, from startups to big industry players and governments too. Together, redesigning the travel of tomorrow. Amadeus, it's how travel works. Visit us to know more, amadeus.com.
Now, it's no wonder that Wilson likes to call the 92-year-old airline a startup. Here's what he had to say about the thought behind it.
Well, I've described it as a startup because really it had decades of underinvestment. I think I'd spoken previously that the email system in the company was so dysfunctional that people used Gmail. We were the last airline in the world on a particular passenger service reservation system, the owner of which shut down and kicked us off. We were the last company in the world on a particular SAP enterprise resource management platform. So from an IT perspective, it just had to be completely rebuilt from scratch.
We also had on stage CEOs of two of the biggest OTAs in India, MakeMyTrip and Yatra, which are both publicly listed in NASDAQ. Yatra has also had an Indian IPO launch last year. They shared the stage with Skift executive editor and founding editor Dennis Shawl and spoke about why India's travel market needs to prioritize online penetration.
Luckily, we are in a country where the market is growing and growing phenomenally. And if, the overall market is growing, but if you come to the digital market, digital market is growing even at a faster rate, right? Look at the internet penetration today.
Was it like 49% or something like that?
Yeah, 50% internet penetration, but the e-commerce penetration is only about 20%, right? So, just between the internet penetration and e-commerce penetration, there's a huge amount of headroom. Is about 90 million households that are getting added in the next 5 years are going to be headed by millennials. Now, millennials who were born in liberalized India, and the buying behavior, the predominant buying behavior is online, right? So you can see, from an online penetration standpoint, digitization standpoint, if you look at in the country as a whole, there's a huge amount of push. We didn't talk about, this was basically working with the partners and saying that you can book at zero and you can cancel 24 hours in advance if you want to. So there was a nuanced sort of approach that we had taken out here to obviously grow the hotel business, because there was a huge opportunity. There still is a huge opportunity because the online penetration for the hotel segment relative to the flight segment is much, much lower today, whether it is domestic or international hotels.
To me, enterprise is where consumer travel was maybe about 10, 12 years ago from an online penetration point of view. It's just about getting onto the S-curve for online penetration. So the focus is in terms of growing and going deeper into the market rather than getting into a head-on battle, which then makes it a zero-sum game.
Another really interesting conversation was the one senior hospitality editor Sean O'Neill had with the CEO and Managing Director of the Oberoi Group, Vikram Oberoi. During this discussion, Oberoi spoke about how the hotel group's quest to be the best, mind you, and not the biggest, makes it focus on quality and invest in employee growth.
I think our focus really is not to be the biggest. That's not the playing field in which we play. And our focus is really to be the very best. And again, if I look at our key stakeholders, to offer the best service to our guests, both meaningful and personalized attention, given from the heart of our people, and at least our belief, and probably supported by data as well, is that guests, number one, appreciate that and are willing to pay a premium for that. So I think that's very important for us. And for our colleagues also, we invest huge amounts of money for the size of organization that we are on learning and development. We have the Oberoi Center of Learning and Development. And in order for us to attract the best talent, the best way to do that is to give people a strong foundation that allows them to grow within Oberoi or outside of Oberoi. So we're very proud of the investments we make in human talent, and that allows us also to attract the best talent as well. So I think that gives us a very strong foundation to really provide exceptional levels of service and really to be the very best we can.
Talking about future plans, the Oberoi's top boss also spoke about the company's vision for 2030, highlighting the focus on smaller hotels.
And our vision for 2030 is to expand both the Oberoi brand and the Trident brand. We'd like to open 50 hotels, 50 new hotels by 2030. So that's what we all focused on delivering. And some of the hotels will be smaller. One of the things that we're working on is, and we've got an internal name for it, which is Oberoi Nature. That won't be the final branding, but these are smaller hotels in beautiful locations, have a strong sense of place, and all our research on guests tell us that is something that they would deeply value.
I know that was a very short recap of what happened on stage on March 20th, but I'm glad that I got to share with you some of the discussions that we had on stage. Do let me know if you'd like to hear more from the discussions at the Skift India Summit, and do share some of your favorite moments from the event. Thank you once again for tuning in. I'm really thrilled to be back behind the mic and look forward to exploring more exciting topics with you in the episodes to come. Stay tuned for more insights, interviews, and discussions on all things travel and tourism. Thank you very much.
This has been the Skift India Travel Podcast. Thank you for listening.